And we are live, episode 46 of the PHU Dynasty podcast. Back again with my esteemed co host, Sean O'Shea, who has been very much in the news recently with some trades and some fun stuff going on in the league here after the draft. So, Sean, how's things going for you?
It just gets a little boring if nobody's making a trade every once in a while, you know? You just gotta splash the pot. Gotta make it
That,
interesting.
that is true.
I'm good, thank you.
Got to keep it interesting, and especially when we're in the dog days of summer. We're not quite there yet. I feel like June is really
Get us
the,
to training
or I'm
camp.
sorry, July is really the rough go.
Get us to that New
Just got to
York
get to
Jets.
training camp. Then
Get
we
us
get
to
to
that
talk
New York
about
Jets
injuries.
in Hard Knocks with Aaron Rodgers. Can't wait for that.
I saw that. I love how like they were like, yeah, we really don't want to do it. They're still gonna have to do it.
Yeah,
It's a mess. But I don't understand why they force teams to do that. But I do know why, because money. But I
money.
don't think it's cool that they do that. Yeah,
There's a few
exactly.
teams. There's a few
All
teams
right.
that do really cool stuff, like on YouTube. They'll put up like their own like path to the draft, and then they'll do like
Oh yeah.
other stuff out of that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's just as good. I think they took those notes from Hard Knocks and kind of were like, I think we could do that like pretty easily
Mhm.
here. So I think like half the teams in the league have that at this point. Um, all right, so let's get into it. So we had some recent news. So we'll start with the trades. And what better guy to have on the podcast than the guy that was involved in the trades? So the first one was a pretty big splash. And it was Cam Akers and Javonte Williams from the Lionheads going to the Long Gamers, and the Lauderdale Lionheads receive Jonathan Taylor, which is Keep Trade Cuts third RB right now. I believe they have Akers as I had it pulled up. Akers at 23 and Javonte at 15 currently. Um, it says a fair trade. So I mean, value wise, got the value probably that you needed, but it's probably tough for you to give away, Taylor at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would either like to either sell maybe like a little higher because he was RB1 not that long ago. So I feel like it's a little on the decline if you're
Yeah.
gonna sell high. But I still think I'm selling decently high for what I'm expecting after this season. I don't see him ending the season as like a top 8 running back. So I felt pretty good with it, to be honest. I don't like I don't like running backs with running quarterbacks. You just get vultured a lot in the red zone, which Jonathan Taylor's not an uber like receiver. He could be. He's got the skill set, but he's never been used that way. So if you take away more touchdown upside compare and just compile that together, I felt like it was going to be a little bit of a downturn. I don't doubt the talent whatsoever. I think he's one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, but opportunity is probably more important than talent a lot of the times. So that was the idea. I think getting Javante a little early compared to like I think second half of the season, I think he'll really come back. The year after the injury kind of deal. So I think getting in early
Mm-hmm.
on that and a little early out on Taylor will look a little weird now, but I like my trade for me.
Yeah, I think both the guys you got are at 24 or younger, and Taylor's 24. So you get two young backs. Akers definitely trended up towards the end of last year for sure. And then I think if you ask people about Williams, last year, they probably would have said this is a pretty good deal on paper. Um, but also too Taylor, his value last year, I think he was like basically in the top 3 of assets in all of Dynasty at one point. I think he was in that keep trade cut range of like 9,000 whatever, kind of where Bijan and those guys live now. Um, so he could easily bounce back to that level. And I think I like what you said about the opportunity. Like the vulturing is there. The vultures could take away the touchdowns, but also too, just in terms of yardage and overall carries, I could definitely see a world where Anthony Richardson really struggles at quarterback, and they're kind of forced to use Taylor a lot just to take take a lot of the pressure off of him, and he ends up with 350 carries or some shit, and he blows up
Oh,
the
he'll have
league.
three. He'll
Um,
if he plays this
but
season,
it's
he'll have
it's tough.
this year. Oh yeah. Even still,
Yeah,
like
I would argue that he has the highest upside, like out of all the guys that aren't in like the top, 5 right now, maybe.
yeah, I mean I think the easy comparison because Steichen went from Philly to Indy is that like you're gonna compare him to like Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts, obviously much better than Sanders, but like Sanders still had a great year last year and Hurts had a great year, but I think you like people need to realize that the offense in Indy is not going to be anywhere close to as efficient. I actually
Yeah.
like Anthony Richardson more than I think, like more than the median people, like more than most people do. I actually think he's pretty pass ready now. So I
Hmm.
don't know, but I
I
think
was,
that
I was gonna say
offense
that's
is
the
going to
first I've
be
heard that, to be
bottom.
honest.
I think I think that offense is still going to be bottom third in the NFL. So I don't know. I don't like that. That's less opportunity to in the red zone in the five, like within the five, within the 10. So less touchdowns in our league. That's basically you need to score touchdowns to be in the top. There's no receiving bonuses or anything like that. So and I like Javante with
That is true.
Sean Payton offense too. Sean Payton gets the most out of his running backs. So opportunity.
Yeah, and I love Javante too. Like talent wise, I mean, I don't think Javante was too great. Like coming out as prospects, I don't think he was too far away from where Jonathan Taylor was for me as a runner. Um, but I think that Taylor just had a lot more production in college, so that was kind of like the easier of the two bets. But Javante really, like, he was a darling for me for the entire pre-draft process, even really into last year. I had him in redraft, and I believed in him. So I can still believe that he's going to get back to what I think he could be. So this could end up being a great deal if Javante and Cam kind of do what they're supposed to do. It could really just basically get two startable running backs every single week and really help the depth of the team. So I do see the move, and I see why you made it for sure. And we will talk about the Lionheads here. We're going to devote a little bit more time to what they've been doing recently. So let's get to the next trade, and maybe probably a little bit smaller scale trade, but it is with the Battle Axes. So Sean has
Yep.
traded away Justin Fields and 2 fourths in the future for Jared Goff, Samaje Perine, a 26 second and a 25th third. So I'm not even really counting the 25 and 26 fourth. I feel like that's just not even a
Just asset
justifiable
for
means of
yeah.
discussion at this point. So yeah, it's just an extra whatever. So basically, Justin Fields for what I would consider to be a second. P Ryan and Goff would be like the major pieces there. So maybe walk me through what you were thinking about in this trade.
So a little insurance for the Denver backfield doesn't hurt. And honestly, both of them are going to be fantasy relevant in Sean Payton's offense anyway, even if they're both playing. To me, anyway, I think that's pretty fair. P Ryan got 2 years, like $7 or $8 million, which in the running back market is about as good as you can do right now. And I don't think anybody is like, oh
As
man,
a backup
Samaje
for
Perine,
sure.
like yeah, like he doesn't like pop on film or anything. So to get that money is pretty impressive in the open market. So I like him. I love the 26 second round pick. I think Scavelli's got an older roster. So I think my opportunity could be like a top third second round pick kind of deal when we get to that point. So I like that asset in there. And then Fields could make me look really dumb by the end of the season for sure. But I mean, he he did almost all of his damage with his legs. So I mean, I was pretty set at quarterback anyway. So I felt like a pretty decent move for me to get rid of him. I trust Lamar a lot more than I trust him. So if I was going to move one of the two, I was going to move him. And I think Jared Goff he's pretty startable. He's had great years. He got better in Detroit as the season went along. So I like him as like a second, third tier quarterback. I've got Dak on the roster too, so still good at quarterback, and I get a little running back depth and a future pick for a quarterback that I was gonna probably have a hard time starting over Lamar any week. So I feel pretty good about this one.
Yeah, some extra depth for sure. And like you said, that 26 second actually could end up being, like a 2-1 to 2-4, which would be pretty nice. So I consider that to be in that premium range. So I like that a lot. And then, P. Ryan kind of, I could see a Pierre Thomas type role for him as well, where he's kind of usable on a week to week basis as a low end flex or something like that in case you need it. But I did have a question for your team specifically. Did you ever consider moving Prescott, or was Fields kind of the guy that you were going to move all along?
I wanted to get a little more pop of value. I think Prescott's kind of on a downslope. He didn't have a great year last season, so I wasn't sure if I was going to get any value whatsoever if I put him out there. And honestly, I trust him. I like what they did for their offense so far. I think getting Brandon Cooks is going to take some pressure off of the rest of the guys there. They've got some good young tight ends too. They'll be a little healthier up front, I think, next year. So I, I like Dak as a bounce back. So I'd hate selling somebody lower than what I think they're worth because I think he'll have a good bounce back here this year.
Yeah, and he's probably the most steady option on your roster at this point as far as quarterbacks. You can start him any week and get your 15 and get out of there basically. So, for Toronto, this is a good trade, honestly, for them too. Realistically, they didn't give up really any premium assets. They get a potential, stud at the quarterback position. Right now, his quarterback room is a little bit up in the air. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and I forgot he had one other one. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know that Brady's gone, obviously, but I thought he had one other quarterback that was usable at this point. But Fields, can step in and potentially be his QB1 right out of the gate.
Ritter.
So, I mean, if you can get a starting quarterback for Ritter, okay. So, I mean, he could be something, but nothing. I wouldn't start him week one. We'll put it that way. Fields could easily be the week one starter there. So, getting a starting quarterback with a lot of upside that's young for not a whole lot is seems like a Scavelli move to me. So, I like the trade really for both sides here, I think. All right. So now that we've gone through the two recent trades, we can really zero in on what's going on in Lauderdale. And I've deemed this segment the Lauderdale launch segment, and all systems are go for Fort Lauderdale at this point. They are going for the Super Bowl, and I think now you could argue this may be one of the best from a value standpoint. We haven't seen Bijan touch a football in the NFL at this point, but value standpoint could be one of the best running back rooms we've seen in this league. So let's maybe talk a little bit more about what Lauderdale's doing. I feel like they have earned the segment as being the most shrewd team, I guess, this offseason and making some moves to get these top backs. So he's pretty much turned what I would consider to be 4 first-round value assets for Bijan, and then also moves Akers and Javonte to get Taylor. So, Sean, what do you think about what Fort Lauderdale is doing now at this point? Do you think they are the team to beat now, or are they still kind of in that Dan category?
Um, I think he's still probably with Dan. It's tough though. I mean, it really like I've just ran down the rosters. Running backs are great. They're so good. I mean, I'm I like
It's
his
really
third and
good.
fourth running backs. Montgomery and Sanders are pretty damn good. So
I
get
like
a
that.
little
I
worried
like that. And
with
Pacheco.
his wide receiver depth, and Cooper Cup being his top wide receiver is obviously great, but also makes you a little nervous. You never know if you're going to get 7 games on the season or 17 from Cooper Cup. It's tough. He's missed a lot of games. He's 30. So that being said, like if we're doing redraft tomorrow, he's probably my wide receiver one. So maybe two, bounce back and forth
He was
between
so
him
good for me in redraft
and
until he got
Jefferson.
hurt.
Yeah. So just like everybody
Yeah, I
else,
mean
it's gonna be so.
Yeah, it's going to come down to, being healthy, but I feel like the only hole I can really see on the roster at this point, and I don't even want to call it a hole because Kirk Cousins is
Quarterback.
fine, but
Yeah,
quarterback, just isn't really on that tier with all the other maybe contending teams. Like Dan obviously has very strong quarterbacks, so um, but if, I would argue that I don't think there's going to be another running back room like this for quite a while. So uh, it's kind of just at this point, I feel like the receivers, I love Cup as a one. I think Debo, a little bit disappointing, obviously, last year. There is still a chance he bounces back. And Terry McLaurin, I'm actually a Sam Howell guy. So I could
same.
see, I mean, he was wide receiver 14 last year. Like, he's been, think he's 14 last year, 24, 23, 24 throughout his career. So, like, I could see him sustaining, wide receiver 14 again, and ending up being his wide receiver too. So, I really like the receiver room. Waller is a bit of a question mark. What do you think about Darren Waller this year?
I think I told you this. I've been statting out every team for this season just as like a fun because
Mm-hmm.
we play so much fantasy football. I was like, I might as well do this like once at least to see how it goes. I have Darren Waller with like 100 targets this season and like 60, 61 catches. I think I have him as the leading target getter on that team, which isn't saying that much. The receiver room is a hot pile of mess. So, but I think that's him staying healthy, which has been a struggle. Also, he's older. I think people would be surprised how old he is, given his relevancy the last couple of years
He's
in
30.
fantasy football. So, but I mean, after you get out of the like top three guys, like there's not very many people that you would rather have than Waller. He's got big play potential. He could go off on a week and pretty much win you a week sometimes. So I mean, there's definitely worse options to have. I don't think he's in the worst shape. He's doing better than a lot of people in our league at tight end, I think.
Yeah, and he's got some upside guys too later. I actually think Luke
Mm-hmm.
Schoonmaker might have a chance this year in Dallas, and then Mike Gesicki, could end up having a role bigger
Yeah.
than most maybe expect for New England, and then McBride, of course, is kind of on the rookie trajectory of tight ends. Usually, it's going to be year 2 or year 3 if they break out. So there's definitely some upside behind him. So I'm not too worried, but there's some other guys in this roster too, not even in the starting lineup. You got like Christian Kirk sitting on his bench right now. He could easily be a flex guy and definitely a receiver for sure.
Of the
Chark
many
has some sneaky potential upside as a starter.
of the many trade offers I've sent to
Good.
Vince
Sorry,
the
we're on a little
last,
bit of a delay today.
yeah, I know it's throwing me off a little bit. Of the many trade offers that I sent to Vince the last couple months, I'm pretty sure Kirk was in a lot of them. I like him. I'm not convinced that Calvin Ridley is going to come back and just be the guy that he was before he left. He sure could be. Like he's the guy's super talented, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he played like he had like a Players Tribune article or something that came out that said he played on like a broken foot like the year before he left, and he had like 11 touchdowns. So fuck me, that guy is crazy if he did that. But I'm not convinced. I hate when people like are gone for like a year or two and then come back. I think you lose a lot more often than not. So I, I'm sure he could do it, but I like Kirk this year. He's got a good rapport, and I think Lawrence is only going to get better. So
And I don't think I feel like we talked about this on the podcast before, but Calvin Ridley is 28 years old already. Like it's not like he's in that I don't know that Devonte Smith like air like he's not even in. He's 4 years older than Devonte Smith, and Devonte Smith was old coming out. So um, and maybe he doesn't come back as strong at this
he's
point in his
playing on
career
his
if
fifth
he
year
had the
option.
same thing happen earlier in his career. I didn't even know that. I had no idea. That's crazy. All right, so any parting shots on the Lionheads? I mean, at this point, I think I put them maybe. I think I put them like 1A and 1B with Dan maybe at this point. Scavelli maybe drops down a notch, perhaps.
I I I'm obviously made Scavelli's team a little bit better, but I don't love Scavelli's team. that much. There's a big depth problem. When I was trying to send trade offers because I knew he needed a quarterback, like it's pretty obvious he was going to try and trade for a quarterback at some point. Like I have a really hard time coming up with trade offers because there's not much that I wanted back from his team that I knew he would be willing to give up. So it's a little tough. Other parting thing, just for my own like amusement, because I think I'm going to be a little different than a lot of people. I think Debo is the number one receiver on his team, and I think a lot of people might think Ayuk is, and I think Terry McLaurin is the number two on his team this year, which I think would probably
Oh
turn
shit.
a couple heads. So
He likes
not by
Dippin' Dots, huh?
not by much, but I think he's the number two. I think they're pretty even.
Wow. That's some fighting words for the Scary Terry fans out there.
Spicy, and
But
I love
I,
I
I think
love
they're both
Scary
really good.
Terry. Their receiver room is great. I think it's super underrated.
How many people are you gonna find that don't like Scary Terry at this point?
Michigan fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say people that don't like Ohio State probably at this point. Um, yeah, I'm just looking at Scavelli's team just for shits and gigs right now, and he's got really good running backs, but I do see the depth problem. I'm looking through the back end of the roster, and like you said, there's not a whole lot of people that I would be like super excited about. We'll put it that way. I feel very meh about a lot of these guys, but it is Scavelli. He always finds a way to make it happen.
His receivers are thin and old.
Thin and old. I mean, yeah, I mean, like Diggs is getting up there now. He's almost 30, which is crazy to even think about. Um, Williams has been hurt and is old ish, 28. Watson's kind of the young one out of the group, and I don't think he has discussed Watson in trade offers. I know that's been a thing, but I think he's probably going to end up keeping him just because he might be really his only young receiver with upside. So
Mm-hmm.
I could see him just sticking around at this point just for that reason alone. Um, yeah, I mean he's got a good team. Maybe it's not as good as we perhaps originally thought, but I think the boost of Fields definitely helps him. So
For sure. Yeah.
let's see. All right, so we can move off the Lauderdale launch. I'll put that meme in the Discord once we finish this one, so you can have it in the archive. All right, so we did the superlative voting prior to the draft and all this crazy trade shit. So I had to remove some of the segments of this because, like, clearly Vince is the best running backs. He was not before. So I think I removed just about everything as far as like best position groups, but we have lots of other interesting ones to talk about here. So we'll round out the podcast with these. So let's start with the first one on my list. And this one is the best trade of 2022 and the 2023 season. And this goes to the Elk acquiring Trevor Lawrence and Pat Fryermuth for Kyler Murray. And, you got to think that prior to I can't remember, I assume this was before Kyler got hurt, right? So, Lawrence wasn't really like on that big come up quite yet. He really finished out the season solid. So, I mean, to get these two guys, two very startable players for Kyler Murray that probably is on a decline at this point, seems like a pretty great trade for the Elk. What do you think?
I I think I remember at the time because you're right because it was before I think Trevor Lawrence finished strong. I still thought it was a win, just straight up Trevor Lawrence for Kyler Murray, at not adding Fryermuth. So
And to get Pat.
yeah. So I'm not. I'm. I think I've made it pretty known that I'm not a big Kyler Murray guy. Kyler Murray's not a big Kyler Murray guy. Short shit.
He's a big Call of Duty guy.
I'm pretty confident he doesn't even finish that contract in Arizona. I feel like they're gonna have a top. They're probably gonna have two of the top five picks in the draft. I think they're gonna take a quarterback, new regime there, get off of the money they spent, start fresh. It's Arizona. They flip over their entire building every 5 years anyway. So I don't even think he finishes there, and I don't know if he's a starter after that contract in the NFL. So
I don't even know who would take that contract at this point. I mean, it's rough. It's a rough go there in Arizona. They really screwed themselves pretty bad. But I was just remembering that we had our Galactic draft, and I picked Kyler Murray 2 overall, and I thought that was a good move at the time after Josh Allen got picked, and or it was actually after Pat got picked. I was like, oh, Kyler Murray, he's younger, he's got upside, he's not hurt as often, and I was wrong. So
man,
that was a huge mistake.
who had the first pick
Um,
in that draft? Crazy they took that. Wow. Wow.
I don't know. It's such an illogical decision to take Pat Mahomes, and then pair him with Travis Kelsey, and
I went back and looked at our
it's
startup
just
draft, and it is pretty hilarious. You should go do that sometime.
it's awful. I actually kind of want to do like a Galactic podcast just for like a reviewing the initial draft, just to make fun of it.
I'll do it right now.
We'll have to discuss this because I think we can make it a pretty good one. All right, let's move to our next superlative, and this was best waiver pickup, and this was a pretty easy one. It was Jerick McKinnon for the Battle Axes. Pretty much rode him to the championship. I think it was close to unanimous. I think he had 7 votes for Jerick McKinnon. I think Rashid Shaheed got a vote. That's probably Dustin and one other one, but this was clearly the right choice in my opinion. I mean, Jerick McKinnon was an absolute stud down the stretch, so I'm a big
He had
fan.
9 receiving touchdowns as a running back.
I mean, that's stupid. And it felt like he had a touchdown every game for the last like 7.
Yeah, pretty much. But don't worry, Clyde is coming back
nuts.
this year. Don't you worry.
I don't think he's coming back, Sean. I hate to burst the bubble, but I don't think it's happening. Stop trying to make Clyde Edwards-Helaire happen. It's not going to happen.
He's so fetched.
Speaking of other players on your team that flopped, let's talk about this trade. Biggest trade flop was voted. It was the Long Gamers giving up a first and 2/3 for a lot of old guys that are not good anymore. Maybe recap how this trade ended up on your end. What are you thinking?
You win some, you lose some.
Yep, that's kind of what it is. Yeah. It's funny too because even I had all those guys, and I felt halfway decent about all those guys prior to making the trade. Like I didn't even think it would be as bad as it was. Like I was like, oh my god. Like I thought I got a good deal at the time, but I didn't think Galladay would literally be a box of rocks. Robert Woods would barely play. Melvin Gordon got cut twice, I think. It's like I didn't expect all that to happen. I just didn't.
The Gordon one hurt me a lot because I thought he would have at least 40% of that backfield.
That
and then Denver was just fucking awful. I don't think I didn't think Denver was going to light the world on fire with their offense, but I didn't think they were going to be like one of the 5 worst offensive teams in football. I don't know how many people could have guessed that was going to happen.
They were. It just felt like they had way too many talented players for that offense to just suck that bad. Like I don't really understand how that happened still. Well, Nathaniel Hackett seems like that's how it happened, but he was just not it, Chief. All right.
Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowler.
Let's get into
some
way, fun ones here. We got. Still. Oh, sorry. I literally forgot about that. That is so bad. So bad. Didn't Mitchell Trubisky make it one year?
Probably. I don't know.
Seems likely. All right. Trash Talker of the Year. Here's some interesting voting. We had Vince at 5 votes, Alex at 3 votes, and then Tibbs sneaks in there with 2 votes. I think those were the big 3. I think it's the Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce right there for the trash talking of the league.
Where's Dan?
I can't believe Dan's not on this list. I mean, he shows up. I think there's a way to look at messages, like who sent the most messages within Sleeper's history. And I think Dan was like 10 for like the last like 3 years. And I love it.
I love that.
He just quietly does his business. All right, so we got Taco of the Year next. Worst manager, 3 votes for Alex, 2 for Dustin, and then 2 for you, Sean. How do you feel about getting 2 Taco of the Year votes? I don't know. I would give Alex the Taco of the Year personally. I think that's who I voted for.
I traded for Galladay. That's my bad.
Yeah, I think you keep it's an unrecoverable one, unfortunately. Galladay
Sometimes
just,
you just gotta
God man,
apologize
he
in
was
advance.
so bad, and it's so just Michael Clayton to you. Checks in the bank. All right, next up we have Manager of the Year. This was a pretty easy one. Scavelli gets 7 votes, almost unanimous, and then Dan picks up a couple, and Justin sneaks in there with 1. I'm pretty sure I voted for Justin just because I love the guy. But, Scavelli really did a great job this season, despite not really having maybe some of the depth that we talked about earlier. Just finding guys like Jerick McKinnon off the street. That Jared Goff trade was actually on the list of one of the trades that was best in the year to get him, who was functioning in the playoffs and kind of making things happen for him. I mean, it was a really well done job by Scavelli this year. He really earned it.
Yeah, no complaints here. I think I voted for him.
All right, next up, best trade discussion. This was a fun one. And the winner of this one was Dustin Gilchrist and the Kentucky Elk. And I will say, I do enjoy a good Dustin trade discussion. He seems to be open to lots of different ideas, 3-way trades, just whatever he can come up with.
You're
I
telling me
like
you
it.
have how many thirds you want to give me? I'll take them.
That's what it is. I think that's why people said that Dustin was their favorite, because they could dump their thirds on him and just get some guys that they like. That might be why. It's a conspiracy. Maybe it
Poor guy
wasn't
was
actually
so
the best
busy in the
experience. It
third
was
round of
just
my
the best
rookie draft.
value. I know he had like fucking paperwork flying around. It was like that SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob's trying to find the guy's name. We got nothing on the name. All I know is third picks. I think let's see what's next on the docket list. We have the best rookie draft. I think this one was very obvious. Tibbs clearly had the best rookie draft last year, in my opinion. Obviously, had the most picks, but especially the first round, they all hit. I mean, like all the ones that. I mean, I think they were all hits actually. Now I think about it, was Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Drake London was, and then Brees Hall, of course. Jahan Dotson at the end of the first was great. I didn't even like that pick at the time. That worked out great for him. He did very well and really restarted his team very nicely. All right, next up on the list, what team thinks they are better than they actually are? And this one goes to our good friend Alex Morales. I feel like that was I think he got 4 or 5 votes, and this was prior to all of the draft and all that. I don't know, it was just after the draft, I believe. So no, it was before the draft because we had to do the rule changes. So Vince got a few votes for this one as well, and I think Dustin got a couple of votes as well. So I think those two may have dropped off after this after the recent trade. So Alex took home that honor. However, he backed it up with this accolade. He was voted the best podcast guest with 5, and I could see that. I could totally see that because everybody loves a good Alex podcast, because I know I do.
The guy knows how to monologue.
He certainly knows how to get the crowd going. That's for sure. All right. So, favorite team in the league other than your own. This was an interesting one. And the answer, or not the answer, the top vote getter was the Los Angeles Lambs with 3 votes. And shortly behind him was the Battle Axes. Everybody else kind of was scattered at 1. There's a bunch of 1s. So the Lambs take the top spot there, and then we'll back that up with a similar accolade, best team branding other than your own, and the Lambs also won that one. So I think they just like the branding. I think that seems like it's has a theme there. And then the Bombers picked up a couple of votes, and then myself with a couple of votes. Thanks. The Armadillos, I think the Armadillos really did a good job. overall with their marketing scheme. So they got to get people to show up to the games when their team's this bad. So they work their hardest. I think you could argue now, after recent trades, this would not be the case. With worse team branding, the lampposts kind of upgraded their look this offseason. And I think it was as a result of this voting, because I told Dan, I was like, hey, you were voted the worst brand. Do you want to change? And he was like, yeah, I'll change.
They got right to it, man. I like
like a little...
I like how quickly this franchise works.
Yeah, they recognize the issues and then just pounce trying to make the changes. So I love it. So that is what we had on the agenda today. Sean, maybe we'll play a little bit of Would You Rather to close this one out. Maybe I can ask you some Would You Rathers.
As long as none of them have Kenny Galladay in it, I'm down.
Let's hold on a sec. Now that you mention it, let's find where's Kenny Galladay's value as of right now. Keep trade cut. Oh my God, he's not even on there.
83. Oh,
dude, he's not. He's literally not there.
He's got to be on there.
Hold on, this can't be right. He's got to be on here. I just typed in his name. It didn't even show up. Oh no, not Kenny.
Sometimes when your value is so high, it can't be.
Dude,
calculated.
I don't see him. But Kenny Nwangwu for the Minnesota Vikings is on there.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All right. Let's see. I'll pull up some receivers to ask you. So here's some receivers. Would you rather have, this is actually pretty good, Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, both on the same team?
Am I just trying to guess whose value is higher? Or me personally?
If you were, let's say you were a contending team and you wanted to win, who would you rather have?
This season, I'd rather have Mike Williams. More touchdown upside. They're both going to miss games.
Keenan Allen, unfortunately, is 31. The days are numbered, unfortunately, for him. But I miss the old Keenan Allen. I wish he wasn't hurt as much. Let's try another one. This is another interesting one. DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin? We know you're a little dot guy.
Terry.
Yeah, Scary Terry right now is a little bit below DJ Moore. Jahan Dotson ahead of both of them by 3. Let's find another one on here's some good veterans here. Would you rather have Stephon Diggs or Devontae Adams? That's a tight one for me. I'm back and forth. I don't know. This is a hard one. I would go Diggs, I think.
I'll take Adams then.
He's been such a weenie though lately.
I know. No, I don't like it. He's doing the same stuff he did before he left Minnesota.
It's like what? Like I just don't know what there is to complain about. I just I don't understand. He's got everything he could want. He's got the best quarterback, arguably. Like I just don't understand. Like he's got everything he could ask for, and he's still a problem. Like I just hate it. The Vikings are looking very smart right now. Let's see, down lower on the list. Actually, this would be a fun one for you. Maybe just think about it in general terms, maybe not contending terms, but Najee Harris or Javonte Williams.
I'm going to try not to be biased, but I'm still going to go with Javonte Williams. He's just more of an explosive runner. Najee is great. I think he's going to have a much better season this year. But I think once Javonte's back, I just think he's got a higher ceiling as a player. Now, whether they're going to have the opportunities,
I would agree.
I don't know. Najee's made a living on opportunity so far, but I think I would go Javonte.
Yeah, they had Najee about 500 points higher. I think Najee was the 44th overall player, and they got Javonte at 53. I mean, if you're looking at just overall upside and talent, I would agree. I think Javante is the better player, but the opportunity that Harris seems to get every year, it kind of offsets the talent part of it for me. So it is very close. But I think
To
I would
go
probably go Harris
to
especially if I
go
was.
quadruple back to
All right,
when
go
we
ahead.
were talking about the Javante trade initially. I think the trade is going to look really bad for me the first 8 weeks of the season, and I'm expecting that.
I mean, yeah, he's going to be coming back from a terrible injury. It's going to be tough for him. So let's find some lower ones on the list for running back. Then we'll go to tight end, and then we'll wrap this up. So let's see if I can find. Ooh, here's another good one involving you: Rachaad White or Cam Akers.
I Cam Akers. I
You got a two. Actually, they're the exact same age, basically, which is kind of shocking.
I I liked Cam Akers before he came into the league. I think he's a good running back. Rachaad White I think is a good receiver of the backfield. I think he's fine, but I don't think he's much of anything other than somebody that's going to get a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what ends up happening with Rachaad White because I don't truly. I'm with you. I don't know if he can really handle a Seattle Seahawks like workload that the new offensive coordinator brings in. I'm a little concerned about that. So, um, but at the same time, I do like what he does in the receiving game. So, Akers is definitely more of like the true running back of the two, and I still think Akers actually has upside receiving, but I liked Akers coming out a lot too, much more than I did White. So I think I might side with you on that one with Akers right now. But White definitely has the opportunity to say, Eric, you're an idiot. So, all right, let's go to tight end. We'll wrap that up. Let's see if I can find any good ones here. All right. How about we'll go to
Let's do this.
Philly. How about that? Dallas Goedert or George Kittle?
I've statted both of them out
Because I
already
think
for the
Kittle's the answer for
season.
me if he's healthy.
Yeah, I would. San Francisco is a bitch to try and stat out their team. I did that one recently. I was not
They're
looking
all over
forward
the
to it.
place.
I'm pretty sure I had Kittle with like 140 fantasy points, maybe 130, something like that. And Goddard was at like 110, like something like that, 115. It was Kittle. I know Kittle was higher, so I'll take Kittle.
Yeah, Kittle's definitely higher. He's on Keep Trade Cuts rankings. He's 70 overall, and Dallas Goedert is at 81 overall. Man, I gotta tell you, we were talking about Darren Waller earlier. I'm looking at these rankings. They have Darren Waller dynasty value wise. Obviously, he's older, but he is now in the same tier as Greg Dulcich, David Njoku, and Chiga Okonkwo.
I would take him
That's pretty
third into
wild
that
to me. I don't know.
if I
Maybe it's
was
just a
picking.
little shocking. So who are the two above him? Probably Chig and Dulcich.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how Njoku is even in that conversation, but I don't. Dude, David
Well,
Njoku is only 27 somehow.
are you still mad that he got a contract over in Cleveland?
Oh, I'm still upset. Still upset, not only because he's not worth the contract, but he completely cock blocked Harrison Bryant. Not a fan.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah,
Cole Kmet is so far down here, by the way. He's obscenely low. He's tight end 16.
he's the third or fourth option on a team that throws 24 times a game.
I don't know. I just like the guy. I hate that.
I do too.
All
I do
right.
too. He was
Any
like tight end
hoozles.
six last year.
Let's let's go ahead and wrap the. Oh, we have a comment from Alex Morales I missed from earlier. Oh no, I'm so sorry, Alex. Can't wait to
2032.
see Dustin's path to the draft in 2032. I wonder, I can probably. What if I did a dynasty like documentary like in the off season. Like that would be kind of funny. Like if I did like a path to the draft for like I could like get some interviews and shit and just like make this stupid documentary about I don't know, like just the whole league, not just one team. We could do like a what's the it's like around the NFL, like where they do like these small like clips and bites from each team.
Is
That
Ellie
would be
going to be
kind of
the
funny.
manager of the
Fill
Muskrats in
up the July
2022?
time frame. I mean, it's very possible.
I'll
It's
make
possible.
Sloan.
At least
I'll make
co-manager.
Sloan my manager if he makes Ellie his manager.
I mean, they could co-manage the Galactic League to start maybe as a step into the
I was
foray,
kind
and
of
then maybe
co-manager.
take over after that. Or oh, so you might have two co-managers. What you're saying?
Whatever pisses off Vince.
Oh man, that would be incredible. Oh man, that was pretty funny though. All right, so let's wrap this up. We're at 45 minutes. We'll come back with another podcast somewhat soon. I know we have a couple other things that we have planned. I know for a fact that we're gonna have. I have been trying to get Dan on the podcast for quite a while. I'm gonna get Dan on this podcast at some point. I promise. He's got to get on here. Oh, hold on a second. Another comment. My young Padawan, Ellie. It makes perfect sense. So we'll see you guys soon. Let me know if you have any other ideas or things that you want to see us talk about, and we'll get it going. Thanks again, and we will see you later.